Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching live. If you're listening to the recording on your favorite streaming platform or on Confoes.com, good day to you too. We're going to have another amazing episode of Social Convos. Diego, how are you today?
Pretty good. We almost made a boo boo. Forgot to put in all the channels.
It was almost going to be a record only session today, but
Yeah,
hopefully we fixed that.
but
Um,
that's fine. Luckily, everything's up again. We had a yesterday was a very interesting day. Everything Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp was down, and curious to know how you found that.
I was more on Twitter than usual. I
More,
think that's one thing. I actually didn't know that Facebook was down and that WhatsApp was down and that Instagram was down. I found out that it was down through Twitter trending, maybe Facebook. Maybe Facebook was trending on Twitter. But like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, okay. Which also seems to be fair to say that I'm less on Facebook than I used to be because I haven't even noticed it.
that's a good thing, I gotta say. And yeah, I noticed it. Actually, my brother asked me why isn't my WhatsApp messaging sending. So I checked and later figured out, okay, it's not just WhatsApp, it's Facebook and everything else. And I'm curious to find out how our guest uh, found yesterday. But before we found out what her experience was, let's introduce her briefly, and she'll tell us more about herself in a bit. Our guest tonight is, well, yeah, tonight for us is Ananta Khemradj. She is here in Suriname from, yeah, back from the Netherlands. I guess I'll call it a workation. She'll correct me if I'm wrong. But I bumped into her last week actually after I had a drink at Wangbong with another friend from the Netherlands who's here on vacation. And funny story, you actually met her Sunday when we had dim sum with a previous guest with Chandel. So in this rare occasion
It's
and
all connected,
yeah,
Diego.
in
It's all
this
connected.
serendipitous moment, we got to sit down with a previous guest and a current guest at one table to just talk live, talk interesting stuff. And Ananta will tell us more about her journey, her curiosity. Something I really look up to Ananta is the way she asks questions and that she has no like fear of looking for the truth, and that kind of paved the way towards where she is now. And she'll probably tell us more about either her journalistic background, filmmaking background, everything she's done up till now, and what she's currently doing here in Suriname. Ananta, welcome to Social Combos.
Thank you guys. And thank you for this really nice introduction. I was listening to it. I was like, okay, wow. It's been a journey, definitely. It's been a journey, and curiosity is really the core of my journey. As a child, actually, already, I got scolded here in Suriname by my teachers because I used to ask too much questions. um, but I'm glad that I kept that in a way because it's not always difficult to be curious in Suriname
Yeah.
when you are small or when you are growing up. Um, but it's it's something I sometimes it they always say like curiosity kills the cat. And sometimes I come into situations where I'm like maybe my curiosity was not really helping me. Um, but it also brings you a lot, and yeah, that's it's part of the journey, definitely.
All right. We'll talk about that more in a bit, but how did you find yesterday? Did you have the same experience like Shanluk? Did you notice it even? How
Yes, I
connected
noticed
are
it.
you to the
I'm
online
um
space?
I'm really connected, but more in a way that I'm a news junkie. So we 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 had a team. We should had a team meeting with the team, my film team here, and I couldn't really reach them through WhatsApp. But I have my alerts, my news alerts. So within a few minutes, I found out that there was a problem with social media, with Facebook and with WhatsApp. But actually, I liked it a bit. I had this conversation with a friend because I'm making a documentary here, and social media um, can be an issue for uh, a lot of people to speak up, or it's really difficult for me now being here and getting people in front of the camera, especially young people. In my last film, it was really easy to talk to young people in front of the camera, but making this film and being here now for more than 2 weeks, I got really frustrated because nobody really wanted to talk on camera. And the reason they gave me was that they are scared that they would be scolded or made fun of on the internet, which is something we see a lot this time. So I was like, oh, let it be canceled in Suriname for a long time. Maybe that's part of the solution for us speaking to each other on other in live and have conversations together, not behind a desk or anonymous. And I felt a bit relieved actually.
Interesting. Before we jump into more in depth behind the story of Ananta, quickly we want to give a shout out to the people watching as well. Hedwig is watching on LinkedIn. Janalfa agrees with you. She said, I kind of liked it as well, that everything was off. And Devin said, yes, I found out because of work. And after he found out, he went straight to Twitter as well. And Ricky wants to know a little bit more about what the topic is tonight. And tonight, Ricky, basically the topic is curiosity. And let's start off with a curious question. And I wanted to bring up the curiosity kills the cat, and you brought it up straight away. So that was kind of funny. But the first question for me is, do you consider yourself a journalist? Do you consider yourself a filmmaker? Or do you consider yourself a bit of both?
Well, actually, it's I find it a difficult question because when are you a journalist and when are you a filmmaker? And I'm also in the Netherlands. I have another job. I work at a bank, so um, I find it a bit hard to define myself within a certain profession. I do stuff that is related to journalism. I'm making documentaries. I'm working on the second one, so it's I find it a lot to call myself a filmmaker. I'm not sure when you are a filmmaker, but I'm just trying something. But I also have a profession within the bank, and that's my main job actually. Uh, so it would be a bit difficult for me to define myself within a profession, but um, the core in everything I do is my curiosity. I want to know the banking system, so I start working with the bank. I want to find out how it works with filmmaking, so start doing a film. And I wanted to explore the media, so I've worked here as a journalist, but the term journalist, I don't think I deserve that yet.
So would you say you correlate the association with the job, the terminology like journalism, filmmaker? Do you correlate it that with an income or the amount of hours you've put into executing that,
No,
or a bit
I
of both?
wouldn't relate it to income. I wouldn't relate it to the hours you put in a certain profession. I would relate it to the education, the skill, the track record. Um, and I don't feel personally that I have the record yet to call myself a filmmaker or call myself a journalist. But I can call myself a lobbyist for the bank because I've been doing that for 4 years now. Um, so yeah, it's for me it's the track record and what have you accomplished as a certain within a certain profession. So I'm not comfortable calling myself a filmmaker or a journalist yet.
All right. Well, for many, most people who started out have not written as many blog posts or articles as you, have not even produced a documentary like you have. So, in my as a observer, I'd consider you one, be it in a scale, if you want to scale from, beginner to pro, whatever, doesn't matter. You are executing. So I would consider you both. And you are combining actually both. And I think making documentaries is kind of journalism and filmmaking combined, like a marriage between the two. So I think you found a way to combine those curiosities into one thing. And I'm not sure how the banking fits into that, but I'm sure you have
It
a bigger
fits
plan.
perfectly,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sure you have a bigger plan behind it as well. But yeah, so we got a few more comments coming in. Everything looks great and sounds good. And we actually have a Twitch viewer, which is very rare. Welcome again, Zess. So yeah, all right. So very interesting. You're a lobbyist at the bank. So what set you on the path to finding out more about the banking system in particular?
So it was not really my curiosity didn't start out with the banking system. So I was working here as a journalist in Suriname, and I was presenting a radio news blog, and I had this interview with. He was then, I think, he was the Minister of Finance. He was not the governor of the central bank anymore. We know him as Gilmer Hoefdraad, and I was it had been 2 years for me being working as a journalist at ABC, and I really wanted him to be my guest in my show because nobody else was able to get him, and he lived around the corner of ABC. So it was not. It was a time period. We had the elections in 2015, and after that, everything immediately started to go downhill with our economy. So I really felt the need to have him in my show. So I went to his house every morning because he wouldn't speak to the media. Actually, he would do press conferences, but one on one, he wasn't doing that. So for 2 weeks, every day I went to his house in the morning to ask his his guard if he was able to come to my news show. And after 2 weeks, his secretary called and he said, I'm gonna join you, but on I have one um, consideration, or how do you say that? I have
One condition.
one condition. The expert panel would also. I mean, I'm asking the questions, but there's a panel who really asks the deeper questions, the technical questions. He said, I don't want them to be there. It's just you and me. And I think it was a bit of my ego that said, you should just do it because nobody else will have him. So you have this golden opportunity. And I thought I will prepare myself really well for this interview. I did. but having him across me and not being able to, not having a financial background, not having a certain kind of financial literacy, not being able to understand the economic language. I mean, you can understand economics in a certain way, but when someone starts to talk in their economic language, it was not easy to follow him. And I was not confident enough to just tell him, Mr. Hoefdraad, if I'm not able to understand what you're saying, the, the listeners will also not be able to understand it. It was just, I screwed up big time. And but it also sparked and started my curiosity within economics. Like, I really felt the need to understand the economic system and how it works and how the financial world works. And it triggered something in me to educate myself. So I left Suriname within 3 months, actually, and to do my pre-master in economics. And when I did my pre-master economics, you start to get to understand the language, and a whole new world opens up for you. And so I wanted to find out how it was in in the real world. You know, you're studying a lot, but how is it in the real world? So I just started at the bank, um, with the intention to go back to journalism. But we're now 4 years ahead, and I haven't turned back to journalism in the way I was doing journalism then. I've become a lobbyist of the bank. I have never thought that I would be. So my friends, if they also are like, how did you end up with a bank?
Out of curiosity, what does a lobbyist do at a bank?
So I'm a lobbyist of the agriculture part of the bank. I work with a bank which has a big background within agriculture. And as a lobbyist, you defend, or um, the interests of the bank. You try to, um, how do I say this? Um, you try to protect the interests of the bank within the agriculture sector, but not only the interest, because when we say the interest of the bank, we always think about money, right? But it's more than that. It's also making sure the sustainability laws that are necessary to make a transition possible within agriculture, that you are within the bank, we are really aligned with all those legislations that is being made within politics. So I'm between the bank, the politics, and the farmers in the Netherlands. And when I have to go to the farmers, or I'm between cows, they look at me like, "What? How are you? Who's this brown girl here in this farming world?" But I love it. It's amazing to, and it sparked a new interest. I really got really interested in the agriculture sector also here in Suriname. I've
We
never
have to jump into this. We have to jump into this because, um, especially on the politics level in Suriname, there has been mentions we want to do more with agriculture. Now, if you look at the Dutch system compared to the Surinamese system, what are laws or what are certain kinds of legislation which you found effective in the Netherlands, which would work here as well to better protect the farmers or
so
to make it easier for them?
for me, that's a difficult question because I don't have a lot of knowledge of the system here in Suriname, um, how the farming system really works here in Suriname. But if I analyze the farming system in the Netherlands and what makes it work in a way it works now, it's because it's really organized. Um, Farmers are well organized, um, throughout the whole chain. People are really well organized. So if we want to accomplish something, um, you have the you know which are the right people to go to make something happen. But you also are able to identify problems a lot easier. So I think in Suriname, we have a lot of opportunities, but our biggest challenge is how are we going to organize ourselves in making those, or making, to be able to grab those opportunities. We need to organize and work together. We need to start working together. And that's also something that I see happening within the farming industry in the Netherlands. They really need each other. If you are part of the, I wouldn't know the English names of it, but you have akkerbouw, you have veehouderij. They all collaborate because they need each other's stuff actually.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
part of a broader supply chain, I'd assume, right?
yes, yes, and their interests are um, organized. I mean, I'm just part of one part of the interest group, if you would say it like that. But they have a voice, and I think here in Suriname, farmers, they have trouble to make their. They don't really have a voice in the system. But again, I don't really know the agriculture system here. I'm
So we're
trying to
not
find
we're
it.
not gonna bite you on that. That's also not our intention. I think to put it more in a perspective, you've lived in both Suriname and the Netherlands. You were actually born in the Netherlands, grew up in Suriname, so you've both lived in both countries. What would be interesting for me is from both a living perspective in the Netherlands and in Suriname. What are like if you could combine the two, like get the best of both worlds? Which things about the Netherlands and which things about Suriname would you be like? Yes, I want to have that part. Basically, 12 months a year instead of just when you're in that country.
Let me start with the Netherlands because I live in the Netherlands now. The biggest aspect of what I really like about the Netherlands is the opportunity to learn and the opportunity to explore. It's like this playground where you have teachers all over the place. Everything is your teacher. If you are in your work environment, if you watch the TV, um, wherever you are, there's something to learn. And in the phase I am right now, learning is just my biggest occupation. I really love to learn new things and um, meet new people, etc., etc. But it's not the place where I want to Live. It's the place I want to be is Suriname, and the reason I want to be in Suriname um, is because of the the biggest reason I really want to be in Suriname is I feel home at home here. I think that's the most important aspect of why I want to be here. And I feel like um, I belong in Suriname. But I also feel like there's a lot to do in our country, in Suriname. And I've really been formed by both, so the Netherlands and Suriname. Um, but for me, Suriname is really in my heart, and the Netherlands is has a place in my heart as well. It's not that I'm not happy there. I love being there. I love the work I'm doing there right now. Uh, but Suriname, if I could have the opportunity to learn and the things I'm doing not there now in Suriname, then I would be here tomorrow. But actually, I don't really need that. I'm here now, and I feel like what am I doing in the Netherlands? Actually, my girlfriend is there. That's the biggest reason, I think. But otherwise, I'm not sure anymore what I'm doing there. Learning.
So to sum it up, it's basically I could see it as a playground to just try things, learn things, do things. There's a pool of opportunity or things to try, and you could switch from one thing to another in an instant, basically. And Gregory says it here. This is probably the weirdest career trajectory he's seen, and I think it's you're a perfect example of that. It's possible to switch from one thing to another 180 degrees. And if you look at it from a broader perspective, everything is kind of interconnected, even if it doesn't seem that way in the beginning.
It is because the core of it for everything I do, but that's something I realized just recently, is that I really like the complexity of certain aspects. So within film, I'm searching for um, um, uh, the polarisatie. How do I say it in English? Uh,
Polarization, yeah.
Mm.
Polarization of how to unite people within my profession, within the bank, the agriculture in the Netherlands. It's a mess. Um, we have a lot of issues there right now, and uh, there isn't really a lot of unity within agriculture. So I'm the core of everything I do if it's with film, if it's with the bank, if it's in Suriname, if it's in the Netherlands, it's trying uh, to contribute to unity, and um, that's the core. But it has different kind of forms in which I'm doing that.
So I have a question about you said you jumped from several different things, and I think this past week I met up with an old friend again, and he kind of shared with me like we did a lot of stuff back in the day, and he's kind of the curious type as well, similar to you, jumping from one thing to the next, starting a project, and then curiosity uh, hits him again, and he starts another thing, goes down that rabbit hole. And then he said he pulled up one of his old USB sticks, and he had folders of projects he started and then just left there unfinished or completed or totally pivoted to something new. So how do you, having done such different things, look back at the things you've tried? You went down a path, you either hit a wall or something else got your attention, so you diverted from that path. How do you look back at the older paths or the previous paths? Or do you think you go back, or do you see implementation in your current path in some way? What do you do with everything that's you've archived so far? If that makes sense.
It makes sense. It makes sense because when you're in that journey of, you're focused on that new thing that really sparked your interest, and you get in that hole, and you don't really understand why it sparks that interest, but it's just there. But when you have done that a few times, the baggage you carry with you, all the archives you have, they they add up. And yes, I've hit a lot of walls in different things that I've done, but um, but I've always um, I took my baggage with me in the process, and definitely making this film. It's like as if everything comes together in making this project. All those also personal. I mean, we've been talking about the curiosity on a professional level, but it's also on a personal level, and um, and the things you learn when you have a curious mindset, they don't disappear. All those that friend of yours has your USB stick. My USB stick is somewhere here in my head or in my heart, and I forget about it, and then something happens. And yesterday I had this recording with a friend, with a really really old friend, and um, and within that conversation, something came up, which was it was a feeling of like so many years back. Um, but it's always there. It's always there, and it helps you in the next journey you're in, and especially in the film I'm making now.
So does that kind of also answer the question about overcoming fear? Like I think a lot of people that want to do certain things, they're curious, but then they reach a point where fear kicks in, like fear of not being able to finish, fear of not making being successful, especially when you transition that much, because taking the jump, it takes kind of a leap of faith, or at least a lot of self-confidence to pull through with it.
Mhm.
So what would you say to like people that have kind of, they know, they feel that they should do something different, but they fear making that transition too much?
I have been at that point in my life, and I haven't been there in a long time anymore. But I'll never forget that feeling, because it was that feeling I had for my whole teenage life. Actually, is the fear, and it's the question is the question you have to ask yourself: what is that fear? Is it failure? Is it not finishing whatever you want to do? For me, it was the fear of judgment. For me, it was the fear of rejection. Um, and we're not aware, I think I was not aware how much I grew up within a certain kind of environment, having a lot of thoughts and beliefs that weren't really mine. But you have to be honest at a certain point when you feel you're not happy anymore. Are those visions or your dreams that you have and that you are pursuing at that point, at that time, are they really yours, or are they something you get from your environment, your parents, your family, or the school system you're in? And so I was at that point, and I quit school at a certain point, because I felt like I really wasn't in touch with myself anymore. I didn't know who I was anymore, and and it was the most difficult decision, because I was graduating from the university. I was at that stage, but um, I had to let it go, and that was fearful, definitely, but it was the most liberating moment of my life, maybe at this time. Maybe I have it again at a certain time, but um, it gave me the courage to understand that if you feel that you need to make a certain choice, um, it comes with a lot of anxiety, but the liberation that it also brings after you went through all those anxiety moments, etc., etc. um, it's as if I live for them now, that I'm searching for, okay, which is my next, what's the next jump gonna be? But I've become a lot more. I'm not jumping that much anymore. Maybe that's because when you're in a relationship and you get a bit older, and yeah, life
Yeah,
happens.
it sounds very familiar. It sounds very
Life
familiar.
happens, but
So
I'm happy where I'm at now.
we want to switch it up a little bit. Diego, I think it's time for some over under questions. So we'll be asking you some questions, and you get to say whether or not you think it's overrated or underrated. And of course, you get the opportunity to elaborate a little bit about that as well. Diego, how many do you want to do, and who's gonna kick it off?
I think we can do the usual three each. I'll give you the chance to start this one because I didn't
Okay,
prepare for this.
okay. So Ananta, physical books like an actual book that you can read, is that underrated or is it overrated?
And if I say like it's underrated, I mean that
People
I
should spend more time.
yes, definitely underrated. I love my books. Yes, it's where I get my yeah. It's the way I travel. I'm not really a traveler yet. I want to travel more, but as a child, I felt like I traveled a lot through reading a lot of books.
What are you currently reading before I go to my?
Hmm? Ah, it's
Whoa, that name sounds familiar or looks familiar.
yes, it's about the role of the Netherlands in 1980 or the coup. So it's a bit heavy.
All right. Um,
Can I just, out of curiosity, can I ask a little bit more? So is it written by Hans Falk himself?
No, it's written by Ellen de Vries. Ellen de Vries is a researcher and a writer, and she has done a lot of research on different subjects in Suriname. One of her books is also about the media in Suriname. Um, and she did research on the reports that are being held by the by the government of the Netherlands till 2060, and it's about this time period. And I'm making a movie which also looks into these aspects. So it's actually I'm doing research.
Okay, sorry about that, Diego. I got even more curious, but we'll leave it
hey,
at that for now.
Ananta's rubbing off on you, so that's good. All right. Okay. So first one for me is being in a banking sector now. Is a bank loan overrated or underrated?
Ooh, overrated. Oh, thank God my bank is not watching. I hope that my
We're
no
gonna have to
overrated.
cut this out for the for the audio section, Diego. Just kidding.
It's I think it's a bit overrated in the sense that I mean um, there are we need to be able to look further to financing possibilities, and working within a bank, they have really difficulty in switching up through different kind of financing possibilities, but that's also part of the banking system. It's not like the bank can easily make those decisions. It's they work in a system, and yeah, it holds us a bit back. But we have the Facebooks now and the IT corporations, so something is gonna happen soon, and the banking system is aware of it as well. So
Interesting, interesting. So my second over under is Netflix documentaries. Overrated or underrated?
underrated. But I'm a documentary. I really love documentary, so I would definitely always say underrated.
So what is a Netflix documentary that you would recommend personally?
Mm, I haven't watched Netflix in a few months now because I've been really focused on the film I'm making. Um, I can't come up with one right now out of my head. I haven't been watching any documentaries lately. Did we watch a documentary lately on Netflix? No, sorry.
Oh, I think the last one I watched was, wait, what was it called again? The one with the ocean stuff. Forgot what it's
Mm,
called. That's the one.
clean.
Seaspiracy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. Last one I watched, and I think I have another one that you recommended, Shanluk, that's still on my to watch list on
Yeah, and of
the film.
course the what's it called? The one about social networks.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely. Yes, I know that one.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's a few recommendations if you're listening that we've personally seen. Next one for me is a PowerPoint presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that underrated or overrated?
Overrated. Uh, so within lobby, for example, we use a lot of presentations and paperworks and etc. etc. And uh, don't get me wrong, I do see the have function of a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, but um, within my profession, lobbying, we need to spice it up and do more with video or different kind of how to share information and how to communicate certain kind of communication. It's always with a PowerPoint presentation, but there are different kind of ways to do that nowadays. And so yeah, it's not like I really have a great opinion about PowerPoint presentation, but if you ask me, I would say a bit overrated.
Got it. And I find it very interesting that you mentioned video for something as mundane as that. Very interesting to spice it up. And I have a quick follow up on that before Shanlu goes to his last one. Do you think people should learn how to make videos from a filmmaker perspective and from a
Definitely.
lobbyist perspective?
Don't
What
stick
would be
to
the
lobbying.
one thing, one added value you would say that video adds to
You get to
the
know
whole?
yourself. You get when you are making a film, it doesn't matter what kind of subject you choose, but you really have to dive deep to what your thoughts are about the subject. So and that's what it's been doing for me is that um it really pushes you to think really hard uh, on some subjects, but to be able to do that, you really need to be able to reflect on yourself, on your thoughts, etc., etc. So I would definitely say that we all should be making a movie or doing something because um, it helps you learn things about yourself you are not really able to learn through different kind of uh, yeah other routes. So filmmaking is something I would recommend to everybody to do.
Awesome.
Okay.
Shanluk, your last one.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking how I can frame it to make it a little bit financial, but not make it too like controversial. So I'm gonna say mobile payments,
Hmm.
underrated or overrated.
It depends if you ask me from which, because I don't know how it is here in Suriname, um, but in the Netherlands, I think it's underrated because I don't have. I don't have my banking card with me anymore. I Everything I do is with my phone. Um, so I like it, and I think it's something, yeah, we should develop more. With, of course, there are a lot of other issues to consider um, in that area, but underrated.
All right, last one for me. I'm gonna stick a bit to the online space and online creation. Anonymity, as in being anonymous, having a different username instead of your personal name online. You think anonymity online is overrated or underrated?
It's overrated, but I don't know if that's the right. Um, I really don't like it. I really don't like the anonymous side of social media, or that people change their, because especially in Suriname, I think that's like within our culture, within Suriname, we are already really good at having our masks up. We don't show our real feelings. We don't talk about our pain, or we talk about frustration and negativity, etc., etc. But what we really feel, we don't really want to share with each other. We are not feeling safe enough to do that. So, we don't even need Facebook to have that kind of mask. But now you have also Facebook in within the Suriname community. Um, so with it's with the films I try to make, is I really want to start a conversation, but an honest conversation, and um, so it should be authentic as possible. So we need to see each other, we need to meet each other, we need to be able to look each other in the eyes, and be willing to understand each other. And that's something I really miss in our country right now. So definitely
For you, overrated.
overrated.
Makes sense.
That's interesting. I quickly want to jump on that, Diego, because something interesting happened today. So today I gave away a lot of NFTs. I started a Twitter account which is saying giving NFTs, and I give away NFTs online, and I've been giving like 5 different giveaways I've done. And so I shared it on my own profile, and in the giveaway account, it says that the giveaway account is owned by me. So I wanted to make it transparent that people know that it was my account and that I was behind it. So also to make sure that people know they're going to be able to get their prize if they
Mm.
win something. And then one of the artists who I'm actually giving away a digital NFT, an art NFT, I'm giving one of his art pieces that he made. I'm giving it away, and he replied on my profile saying like, "Hey, finally a giveaway account where it's somebody I know. It's a human that I know." And I was like, I've never thought of that. A lot of these kind of giveaways on Twitter are like with anonymous accounts that you don't know who the person is behind it. And you kind of also don't even know if the people are giving it away. Like most of them who are legit are, of course, giving them away. But others just copy giveaway from original accounts and they post it as their own account just to get more followers. And then when the giveaway is over, they don't actually give away anything. So it's a really interesting thing that you brought it up.
Yeah, because I think in the end we all really want to get to know each. I mean, not in the example you mentioned. It happens a lot that you buy stuff from people you really don't really know. But I hope um, we get more attention to getting to know each other, and see each other's faces and names. And it's difficult in Suriname, because if you have a name which has a certain kind of like bad reputation, but it's not it's not, don't have
You're
that,
associated
you're
to it.
associated. So we are this small country, and it's difficult, but if we are not able to surpass that or break through that, and I think it's something our generation really needs to start doing, we will not have the conversations we need to have. And that's why I really um, feel like film is something that can support that.
Got it. So to segue to the closing section of our little talk, Gregory said this is a much deeper conversation than our usual videos, so he likes it. Very interesting. Actually, before I go to my question, I see here I also had a question. How come no one likes economists?
Oh,
Especially
I
economists
I
don't
was
like
one. I
economists.
was one. I didn't like. I wouldn't say I didn't like economists. I didn't like people working in. If I would hear that you would be working for a bank, I would immediately had a judgment because, um, and the reason of it is that we have had a banking crisis, of course. In Suriname, when I was working as a journalist, I didn't trust people in positions that were responsible for the finances of our country. Uh, so there's a lot of distrust, and but there's also a lot of, and that's where I found out that my opinion of people working in the banking industry is not the right perception. Is that we don't have the right knowledge in how to judge and how to um, understand certain aspects of what we see in the media. And we have to be honest. I came from the media. We like to present a certain um, frame of the financial system. So there are a lot of factors that play a role in why we don't like economists or banking people, or it's something we don't really understand easily. It's when you see it from the outside, you think, "Oh, that's not right. That doesn't really." Um, but I've changed my opinion a bit about it because I became the lobbyist of the banking industry. So, and there's a lot that's not right, and there are still things that, but it's you have those things in systems.
Yeah.
I've started to understand that being part of a system, some things will not be going right, but the intention of people is not always wrong.
Right. Yeah, I think you hit on a very important point there that financial literacy is lacking for many. And that's where the perception comes. So I'm going to do a plug here. So that's why we also have Capital Convos, our other show with Gregory, where we try to explore the financial economic space a bit more. A few episodes have already been released. We're releasing another one where we actually interviewed a data analyst working in the banking sector tomorrow in from
Nice.
Barbados. So check that out tomorrow. Was my plug. And then to my final question to go full circle. Going back in the beginning, you mentioned you came here to film and you said that people didn't want to talk in front of the camera, and there's kind of this disconnect, and it kind of came back with that question of anonymity, not wanting to speak up. So I'm not sure what you can or what you want to share yet about the documentary, but I want to give you this, I guess, the opportunity now to
Oh, I
um,
can share
yeah,
about the
tell us a
documentary.
bit about the scope or
So I've
the core
made
of the documentary. Right.
so my curiosity started a lot of years ago. I had this question about I grew up here in Suriname and didn't really learn a lot about our recent past. And with the recent past, I would say after the time that we became independent, things are a bit vague, if I would say it like that. So I started this project, and it got documented with a camera, but it wasn't really that. I wasn't really aware of that I was making a film by doing that. It just happened to become this film, and and the question was, why didn't I learn anything, or so why didn't I learn so little about the 80s, the coup, the Binalan sa Orlo, the killings in on the 8th of December, like everything. Why did the coup happen? Why are those people got those people killed? So I had all those questions when I started to do my research on it. So I made this first movie, and I didn't understand what I got myself into, um, and I couldn't get out a long time. I think I'm getting there now by making this second movie, where I ask the question, how how does a generation, we are the first generation that didn't experience what happened in the 80s. How do we how do we handle the history of it, because it's still a part um, of what we see today. They are the same people from then are running our government here. Um, so the question that's really the central question in this documentary is, how can we put it behind us, and how can we start a new narrative for our generation, or and the generations to come? Because I think it's time to close. I, I think it's time to close a chapter for myself. That's why I'm making this movie, because I wanted to get it out of my system, um, and hopefully it does something for Suriname or for our community as well. And I really focus on our generation, because um, we have this opportunity. We also have, I think, a responsibility to change the narrative of our country. And but before we are able to do that, we need to be able to look at the past, to confront it, to talk about it, and hopefully be able to switch to to our future. And in this film, I talk to different kind of people and ask the question, like, how do we get past this thing that is still holding us back in a certain way?
So I know we want to talk about the future, but I have a question about the past.
Mm-hmm.
If you would be able, like you've read about the history of our independence, the history of Suriname in general, if you were able to interview anyone anyone that lived in Suriname over the past 2 centuries, who would you like to interview if that was a possibility? Like if the person could be brought back to life, for instance, who would you like to have spend an hour with to ask questions, and why?
It's a really deep question.
I'm not gonna pin you on it personally. Like if we meet
No,
like in
no,
six
it's
months and you say somebody else because some new things come up, I don't mind. But like if you have to think of one person right now, who would you go for?
Bouterse.
And then I want to follow it up. At what age? At his current age, or if you had the opportunity to interfere him at a certain age because of a certain time frame.
Then I would like to meet him at two time periods: before the 80s and after 1982. So haven't thought about it in that way, but being uh, being so connected to this subject now, and the subject, I mean, this the history I'm researching and I'm focusing on. um, I would want to know what his reasons and what his how did he get from point A to B, and I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. And if you ask me that question, then I would say I would like to understand that. How do you guys reflect on that?
I think it's an interesting process. I think all the books that I have here in my collection that reflect on those periods, I think you've probably read them already. But that's interesting. I might have gone for somebody else, maybe a little bit more towards someone like Doburu or Anton de Com.
Mm-hmm.
But from recent history, yes, I think he's one of the most interesting figures to like pick his brain on the decisions that he has made and the opportunities that he has created for himself.
Yeah, and it's not just about picking his brain, it's about confronting. It's about, like, I'm a bit frustrated what not a bit. I'm really frustrated about what happened in our history. And I'm not able to understand it. And that's why I would want to have that confrontation. Silence.
Diego is so silent at the moment.
Yeah.
He's just
No.
like, okay, yeah,
I,
okay.
no. I don't really have anything to add to that. Actually, I don't have any particular person in mind, but it's very good to hear what you would do, and just the thought process behind that, I think, is very important. uh, Coming back to the curiosity that you've mentioned before, because you can't, yeah, think things change and you don't know what, why, what, how. So just having that, I think, closure or openness, be it good or bad, can make a significant difference to propel forward and close that chapter. And I think you mentioned it very, very well for you because you're so close to it. It would make sense. I could definitely see that. So that's the last thing I'd add to that. But yeah, Shan, look, you've ended it on a really,
It's a
I would say,
cliffhanger. It's
yeah.
a cliffhanger. So if you heard this conversation, you want to hear more, and you really want to dive into how our generation thinks about the history, about what is considered the dictatorship of the 80s and how it happened, what's the thought process behind it, how our generation deals with it, both from a problem solving perspective, but also from a confrontational perspective. Um, you should follow Ananta. And then the question, of course, as always, Ananta, is if people want to join in on the conversation, if people want to learn more about the documentary you made and the one you are currently making, where can they connect with you?
Instagram. I like to have my conversation about this on Instagram. And my Instagram name is Khemradj. Of nee, it is Ananta Khemradj. I changed it.
We'll be sure to link the correct one later on. So, and hopefully Instagram will not go down in any near future when you need it. So, yesterday was a fluke, probably, but a good example why we need to move to a bit more Web 3.0 decentralization. But that is a topic for another day, another cliffhanger. So be sure to follow Ananta. If you want to have a conversation with her, you've heard a tiny bit, a tad bit of the iceberg, and she wants to have these conversations, feel free to reach out.
Always.
And everyone who tuned in, asked some questions, gave some feedback. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Um, so yeah, this episode, the audio podcast version will be released on Saturdays. Ananta, we want to thank you again. I think you were the first guest we randomly met before we actually had the session. That
Yeah.
was very, very cool
And
last
it
Sunday.
should happen like this because this conversation also, I needed to have those here. I needed to have been asked those questions because I'm gonna take it into my film. So
Awesome.
thank you guys for this conversation.
With pleasure. Shanluk, if you have anything to add, feel free, and then you can close us off, and then we go backstage again.
Hi
I
guys.
would say download Signal. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm not saying that at all. So thank you all for the beautiful feedback in the comments, the questions that have been asked, and the comments. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Ananta. Thank you, Diego. This has been Social Confoes. See you back next week. Same place, same time. Bye bye.
Bye.